Let's just get right into it. So I don't like using the orange straight out of the package. It's way too bright and doesn't look natural. And the same way that you'd mix colors for a painting, we're gonna do it with the clay. I'm using Super Sculpting semi-translucent and mixing it with some yellow, orange, and a bit of brown. I'll add a little at a time until I get the shade of orange that I want. And once you have your color mixed and you have the shade that you desire, go ahead and roll it into a ball. Once you've rolled your clay into a ball, you take a ball tool and make 2 indents on opposite sides of it, directly across from each other. Then I use a needle tool to sculpt out the grooves of the pumpkin, working my way around the whole thing. I personally like to keep the spacing between each groove fairly symmetrical, but that's just my style. And once that's done, I smooth out any harsh lines. Then it's time to map out the face. I start with the eyes, then nose and mouth. You'll see me using a bunch of different tools for this, a blade to slice away excess clay, and then I just poke at it with whatever works. I want to get it as clean as possible before baking. At this point, I'm happy with how it looks, so it's going into the oven at 275 for about 18 minutes. And once your clay is done baking, let it cool completely. Now, no matter how clean your hands are or how spotless your workspace is, and especially if you have pets, I've got 4, stuff's going to stick to your clay. I like to use a bit of acetone on a Q-tip to gently wipe away any dust or stray hairs, but be careful not to scrub too hard because acetone can eat away at your clay and ruin all the details that you worked so hard for. This is where I start refining the sculpt even more. Using a blade, I'll carefully carve and slice and just anything to tidy up the lines and details. For the paint job, I like to use a toothpick. I find it gives me way better control. Clean your brushes. Since we're after clean, refined details, once the paint's dry, I'll go back in with a blade and scrape off any messy edges, especially around the black areas. Oh look, it's me, looking like a hot mess. Next, I'm going to mix some yellow oxide with white to paint the inner edges of the eyes, nose, and mouth. Painting this is a very slow process, and I'm pretty sure every single time I do this, I hold my breath and then I wonder, well, I feel lightheaded. I then like to grab some chalk pastels and shave a bit off of this orangey copper color just so I can add a little bit of shading to the pumpkin and give it more depth and something fun to look at in the grooves. Now that the pumpkin is done, we're going to work on the base. I'm not entirely sure what happened to the footage, but I sculpted this with clay. And I'm adding in a felt bottom, so every angle that you look at the piece, it still looks pretty. Don't neglect the bottom. Here I have some static grass, one of my favorite things to use. I use grass in a lot of my pieces. It's really fun and also realistic looking. And then we have some foliage and some autumn leaves. I like to work on a sheet of paper for this part because it makes cleanup way easier. And when you're working with static grass and fine materials, it gets messy very quickly. So you can just scoop up the extra and pour it right back into the jar. First, I'm applying some glue to the base, then using my static grass applicator, and we just shake, shake, shake. Tap off the excess, tap, 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 smack the booty. Now we want to make sure this little guy sits nice and sturdy on the base, so I'm drilling a hole into the bottom of the pumpkin and another into the base. I'll secure it later with a little bit of wire and glue. I also made these tiny Halloween themed candies out of clay. I don't have a video for those, so sorry. They're super tiny and my favorites are the candy corns. By the way, candy corn is delicious. Alright. I'm just strategically gluing them down, moving things around to see what looks good. Then we're adding foliage to give it some extra height and interest around the display. And of course, the autumn leaves. One last step. I like to brush a bit of gloss over the candies so that they have that realistic, shiny finish. As I said earlier, I never like to neglect the bottoms of anything, so I'll use some tape to get rid of any of the dust or debris before calling it done. And with that, we're done. Our little Halloween inspired display piece is complete. Of course, you can use this technique to create your own unique pumpkins with different shapes, sizes, and expressions. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.